Hey guys, welcome back to East to West Coast Sports Season 2. We are back. NBA season right around the corner. Got a lot to cover. In this episode, I did a podcast with my good friend David, who is a huge Boston sports fan, huge Celtics fan, and we talked everything NBA. Did a little bit of rookie talk, dove into some offseason moves, as well as who we think is going to be a favorite to come out of the East, to come out of the West, and ultimately win this year's NBA title. Leave some comments below with your thoughts on how the NBA season is going to shake out. Are the big moves going to pan out for Milwaukee, Suns, Boston, Lakers? There is a lot to get into. All right, catch you guys in the next one. All right, welcome everyone. David, really appreciate you jumping on. Excited to talk some basketball. Excited for this next NBA season. Got a lot to jump into. It was quite the off season.
Definitely. Pleasure to be here, Matt. Very much excited to talk about NBA and everything in between.
Yeah, let's get right into it. So, kicking us off, let's talk about the rookies. I mean, that's always, the fun part about the offseason is we get new players we've never seen in an NBA setting. And obviously, the big name to kick us off is Wembanyama. But at the same time, there were some other big name rookies in this class as well that I think are going to, make some noise as the season unfolds. So off the bat, what's your opinion so far of Wemby, what you've seen in some of those preseason games? Do you think he's going to live up to the hype?
I do. I think my biggest concern is as a team, I don't know if they're going to be if he's going to be on the court for 70 plus games. The Spurs have a history of not playing those types of players in long stretches for the season. And so I think he's going to be incredible. But I think that we're only going to get snapshots this season.
So with the Spurs, obviously they haven't been a competitive team for the past couple of years. Getting a number one pick in what should be a generational talent like Wemby, do you think they're going to right off the bat try to implement that winning culture?
I think that this is going to be a rebuilding year for them. I don't think that they're going to be very competitive. I still think they're going to be at the bottom of the league. I think similar to how we saw Zion, I think Wemby's going to be just like that. It's going to be must watch basketball. And so I think that this is not the year for them to start, or that it's going to click and going to be a building. It's going to be a building year.
Yeah, I agree. I also think with Wemby's player archetype, with how he's built, they do have to be careful. I mean, you look at a lot of players that are that tall, that athletic. Kevin Durant, Porzingis jumps out, right? Those guys have had early career injuries that affected them for seasons at a time. And everyone knows when you get in the league, it just becomes so much more physical than anything that they played before. So I think that's definitely something that the Spurs have to watch out for. Moving on to obviously the second best rookie that people are thinking so far, Scoot Henderson. A weird offseason for the Portland Trailblazers as well. Scoot basically has the keys to the castle. What is their season going to look like? Because they do have veterans. They do have good players. They got some players in the Dame trade. Are they going to try to be fighting for a play-in position potentially, or do you think they're going to be a bottom feeder team as well?
I think they're going to be a bottom feeding team. Gosh, I can't speak right now. I think they're going to be a bottom feeding team. I think they're going to be exciting to watch, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Anthony Simmons, how he meshes with Scoot. But they're going to have the green light to basically do whatever they want. I think that they probably are going to figure out a way to get off of the Malcolm Brogdon contract, and then the other thing that I'd be curious to see is, are they just going to see how the experiment works between Aiton and Time Lord? I have no idea. I think that Time Lord could be incredible on that team, but he's not the most injury. He's
Resistant.
injury prone. Yeah,
Yeah.
injury resistant.
To me, Portland is a very interesting team because Scoot is going to slot in as the future best player on the team. Now, he's definitely not the best player on the team today, but he could be come middle of the season or by the end of the season. But they have some veterans on the team. They have Jeremy Grant. Like you said, they got Aiton, Brogdon, Rob Will. Anthony Simons, right? They have some really good pieces there where I don't know if tanking as the start of the season goal is the best move for them. I think there's a chance that they could be a competitive team. Honestly, more so than when they had Dame, right? They picked up pieces along the way that I think are going to be better for winning this season. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there will be an experimental phase on what do we have with all of these different assets that we've got. Um, period. I think that they'll quickly realize though that they're going to not want to be in the middle of a competitive West. Um, and I think for that reason, they'll probably most likely move on from some of these more veteran folks, so that they can get more assets and they can build around Scoot.
Yeah.
That's just the way I think it's going to play out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you definitely know what you're getting from Aiton. Not that Aiton is a bad player. I mean, his numbers may be a little bit underlooked, to be honest, but you know what you're getting with him. You know what you're getting with Rob Will, Brogdon, another injury-prone guy. So it may be better to pawn those pieces off, especially the ones they got from Boston, and move those to another team that can use them today. So I agree. Now, being a Warriors fan, we do have to talk about some of the Warriors rookies as well. I was able to watch so far 3 out of the 4 preseason games, and Podjenski actually played in the first 3. Really like what he brings to the table. His IQ, I think, slots in perfectly with what the Warriors want to do. He's a pass first guy, and I think he could easily end up as that number 3 guard over Corey Joseph. The other cool piece is Trace Jackson Davis. And man, he's got a lot of potential. 4-year college guy. He has already, I would say, an NBA body or close to it. And so those 2 pieces, I think, fill a spot that the Warriors, with their offseason moves needed, right? They got rid of Poole. They pick up another guard to run the offense. They've always needed more athletic big guys. And I think Trace Jackson Davis is going to be a really good piece to add to that. In my opinion, I think Jackson Davis probably has a little bit more of a chance to be in the rotation than Pods. I think Pods is going to be, we're going to use you when we're sitting a lot of guys, but I think he's going to play a lot of the G League. What are your thoughts on teams drafting players and sending them right away to the G League? It's somewhat situational, right? The Warriors, they don't need Podjenski right now, but I do think it gives them that ability to just, get more NBA reps. What have you seen in Boston with rookies that have played in the G League team?
The first thing I think about is Jordan Poole. He started on the team, as they were somewhat rebuilding and getting some minutes, but when they started getting competitive again, he kind of lost his rotation spot. And then he went down to the G League, and I think that gave him some confidence. He was probably beating up on a lot of those guys, because he's just that talented.
Yeah.
Um, and I think this game is dictated by confidence.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I totally agree. He was kind of in that middle spot. He was better than G Leaguers, but he wasn't quite an NBA player there. And eventually, through just being in the gym, getting his reps and work in, he moved up to an NBA player. Why don't we touch on Jordan Poole just a little bit while we're on the topic? What do you think he's going to look like in Washington? I've watched so much Golden State Warrior basketball that while he was fantastic as a starter, I'm not sure his player basketball IQ is high enough to translate. Here's the keys. Here, you guys are going to be a winning team, right? I think there's a very good chance Washington ends the season at, maybe 500, maybe a little bit below 500. Do you agree?
I actually don't. I don't agree with that. I think that they're going to be a bottom 3 team in the
Yeah.
league. I don't like, to your point, I don't think he has the highest level of IQ. We saw that in the Golden State Warriors and Celtics series, and then other playoff series that he's had. Um, he just has made some boneheaded mistakes here and there. But that doesn't mean that he's not capable of growing. And I think that this will give him an opportunity to one, to be the guy alongside Kuzma in Washington, and then also kind of figure out what kind of identity he wants to be as a leader. And I think that's going to take some time. I think that this year is going to be all about Jordan Poole, and it's going to be exciting from a stats perspective, but it's not going to be great from a wins perspective.
NBA Twitter and Bay Area Twitter for Warriors definitely agrees with you there. Some people, though, think, man, we really messed up by trading him away and only getting Chris Paul back. To them, I would like to say we got an expiring contract. And Chris Paul, through his past couple years, when he's on a new team, year one, fantastic. That's all we need him for. There's probably less than a 50% chance Chris Paul comes back to the Warriors after this season. From what Poole showed in last postseason, he wasn't worth the contract. Now, maybe in a couple years, that'll pan out to be a little bit better of a contract, but we were getting really handcuffed. This was a little bit more specific to the Warriors in general because of how high paying of a roster they had, the luxury tax, all that. Don't want to go into it, but I think you're right. I think the numbers are going to look really good for Poole because he's going to be playing 35, 38 minutes. He's going to probably play 70 plus games this year, if not closer to 82. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends it with 78, 79 games played. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
going to be interesting to see.
Let me ask you a question. So here are the from last year's East. These are the 5 teams that missed the playoffs entirely, including the play-in. The Pacers, the Wizards, the Magic, the Hornets, and the Pistons. Do you think that the Wizards currently are going to be better than those teams?
I don't think so. I don't think they made any other good enough moves. In my opinion, Jordan Poole is a younger Bradley Beal, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't play a whole lot of defense, can really score. He's going to put up numbers. He's going to get paid. If you're looking at those teams, do you think these are the two that stand out to me? Pacers and Orlando. Those two stand out to me to have a chance. Pacers, I don't know if it's been injury, bad luck there, or they have the roster to, I think, be competitive for a playoff spot. But I really like Orlando, what they've done with some of their younger players. Watching watching Franz in FIBA as well as Banchero in FIBA, both I think have a lot of potential to take another step this year.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually like both Charlotte and Detroit. Um, I think that Charlotte, if they can avoid the injury bug and LaMelo can take another step, I think that's going to be a really good thing for them. I do really like Mark Williams, the center out of Duke, and I like a couple of other their pieces there. Brandon Miller is going to be a baller.
Cade Cunningham too.
Cade Cunningham coming back. They have Monty Williams, the new coach,
Yep.
Instituting some stability there. And so, yeah, I'm excited. I think that they're going to be, I think those teams, those bottom teams are going to be much improved.
Yeah.
And I can't say the same thing about the Wizards.
No, I agree. All right. Let's talk about the offseason moves. Don't want to go over all of them, but obviously let's start with the big ones. Let's start with Boston. Just straight up, what are your thoughts? What would you grade Boston's offseason trades and pickups?
I'd grade it an A plus.
Ooh, A plus. All right.
This team needed a new identity. I think that any Boston Celtics fan has realized that we've seen Marcus Smart for a very long time, and we've seen what this looks like, playoff after playoff after playoff. And unfortunately, I think we just needed a new identity. We needed a new. It was starting to get a little stale. And I love the moves that Brad made.
I think a big piece that is not overlooked, but hasn't necessarily been talked about as much as there wasn't a true point guard. Now, Drew is not a top 10 when it comes to point guard abilities, but he's much more familiar in that role. So I think slotting in Drew as just the de facto, hey, you're in the starting 5, you're going to be the point guard. I think that's going to yield better results for the Celtics.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Drew's a great leader. I think he might be a little bit more of a calming presence. And there was a lot of chatter amongst the locker room and the media saying that Missoula kind of butted heads situationally across the the year with both Grant Williams and Marcus Smart, two very vocal leaders in that locker room for a very long time. So now that those guys are gone, I think it's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very easy to coach Marcus Smart.
Yeah, I'm sure.
um, we were talking about this before. I think Boston's roster, if healthy, that's obviously the big if, and that's probably the if across all the contending teams. If healthy, I think that starting five can go against any starting five in the league, with their 1 through 5 players. The other, obviously the rival to Boston is going to be Milwaukee this season.
Yeah.
Getting Dame was a huge move for them. Obviously, partially to try to show Giannis, we want you here. We're willing to make some moves to keep you here because he is on that, end of his contract. He's already said he's not signing an extension. Do you think if Milwaukee gets bounced before, let's say, even the Eastern Conference Finals, do you think that hinders their chances of retaining Giannis?
I think yes. I think it does because Giannis's window is now. He is at the peak of his powers. He's 28 years old, be turning 29 this season. And the NBA landscape changes on a dime.
Oh yeah.
We can see it, happening
Just this
before our
offseason.
eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. And so I think if they want to make sure that Giannis is successful, they need to ensure that the team comes first and that they're building something for the Eastern Conference Finals and they're prepping their teams, even if that means sacrificing games and preserving talent for the playoffs. And
it's
maybe not getting that 1 or 2 seed.
It's an interesting predicament for Milwaukee because I think the reality is it's Boston and Milwaukee, and then it's Sixers and Heat. Those are tier 1, tier 2. And if you scoot over to the West, right, you can make an argument that the top 5 teams, maybe even 6, right? Probably maybe not 5 and 6, but those first 5 teams are all going to be shuffling up and down the win-loss column. But Milwaukee's case, Boston is that one big team, right? They didn't get a chance to, or they've fallen to Boston a couple times already, even, and it's really like that's been a monkey on their shoulder since they won the championship. And so, what is Chris Middleton going to look like for Milwaukee this year? Obviously, he just hasn't been healthy. And he hasn't been the player that he was when they won the championship. So I think Dame is going to take a lot of pressure, obviously scoring off of those 2 guys, but losing Drew, losing Grayson Allen, losing who else? They lost one other guy. Their defense definitely took a hit. So I think this is a wait and see situation. Giannis seems like a type of guy to want to stay with a team and be loyal. But to your point, if it's win now, there may be better situations for him next year.
Yeah.
Unless they win.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, I think that the Knicks are always kind of looming. That's a big market for him, and they have all their picks and everything like that. And so,
the Knicks are always in the conversation to get big name players, and then when it comes down to it, they never do.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm so excited. As a Celtics fan, I am so excited to match him against Milwaukee. I'm very excited.
Hopefully it's a 1-2 and you get him in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that's what everyone's hoping for. We'll just see there. Let's move over to the West. Let's go with the Suns. Obviously, they also had a pretty big offseason. They got off DeAndre Ayton. They acquired Bradley Beal. Their roster looks very different than just even 2 years ago. Do you think the GM and their coaching staffs, their mentality is going to be, we're just going to outgun you? Or do you think there is a chance for this team to be, let's say, a top 15 defense even?
That's a good question. I think that they're going to have a really I'm curious to see how they start the season. Um, and I think that they've got a really what I'm most impressed about them is they have a lot of depth.
They do.
They have a lot of depth and they trade it and they have some really awesome studs. Maybe some somewhat injury prone studs. Um, KD is not the same player as he once was. He's missed a lot of time over the course of the past 3 or 4 seasons. Um, and so has Devin Booker, and so has Bradley Beal.
Yeah.
But maybe they can manage their minutes a little bit better. But they have a lot of talent across the entire board and a lot of veteran leadership. Um, so I'm very curious to see. I think they're going to be incredible offensively.
Yeah.
I wonder how that translates defensively because they don't really have um, any defenders that scare me.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think we're gonna see a lot of similarities that we saw with the Brooklyn Nets. There's gonna be games when it was Kyrie, Harden, KD. There's gonna be games where they score, maybe close to 140, right? If you get to 140 in an NBA game, that's a high scoring game. But to your point, they lost Bridges, right? Obviously, DeAndre Ayton wasn't a slouch when it comes to the center. No one was stopping Jokic, but he held his own in certain matchups. Um, Bradley Beal is not known to be a defender, right? KD can, but he takes it upon himself to be that offensive leader. Booker, I think he has a chance to be a positive defender, but it's always going to be like right on the cusp. So we'll see. Lakers, though, man. Lakers. Oh, man.
Boo.
Boo. I know. You and I both. Warriors fan, Celtics fan, both really disliking the Lakers right now. But the reality is, similar to Boston, when healthy, their roster looks fantastic. Where do you think Reeves do you think he takes another step here? I mean, he played on USA FIBA team. He sort of became their number 3 guy. As far as value to winning, I think he leapfrogged D'Angelo Russell. What do you think about Reeves as far as his role on the Lakers?
I think he's a stud, and I think they got him for an absolute steal of a price. Um, I think he's just continued to grow in confidence, kind of back to the conversation about Jordan Poole and staying in the G League. I know that I don't know if Austin Reeves was in the G League, but he's just grown in confidence multiple years in a row, and it just came to fruition in a big way last year. Um, and then he made a name for himself on the world stage, which can't be ignored.
Right. I think
He's
there was cases where he was the number 3 guy, maybe 4, but to me it was Edwards, Halliburton, and Reeves a lot of the games.
Yeah, this team has a lot of continuity, and they added another stud and somebody that I think that very highly of in Gabe Vincent. I think that's going to be a big push on how they determine who they are as a culture, and I think that's what Gabe will bring to that team is that grittiness that he had on the Heat and that team that was pretty spectacular down the stretch last year.
Yeah, Lakers
Um,
weren't in a position to make any huge splashes, but they filled in a lot of gaps with some role players that, I think are going to fit well. Similar to the Suns, they're a deep team, maybe a little bit top heavy, but I think they can survive without LeBron, for stretches or even AD. They have some firepower. And that wasn't the case even, the beginning of last season. They helped that depth over the trade deadline. But this year, like you said, more continuity. I think they're going to be a tough team. I think you can make the argument that they're potentially the second best team in the West after the Nuggets.
yeah, I mean, we'll see what they have. LeBron has missed a handful of games in the past few seasons, nagging injuries, but he's shown a lot of grit and resiliency to be able to come back. I remember last year, um, they had to like lace him up late in the season so they could make the playoffs, and they pulled it out and then made a lot of noise in the playoffs,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah,
Um,
it's funny listening to the mainstream guys talk about the Lakers Nuggets series because while it was a sweep, everyone I think really enjoyed those 4 games. I mean, they were competitive games. I don't think there was a world where last year the Lakers could beat the Nuggets in a 7 game series. Obviously, shown that they swept them, but it's not like they weren't close a couple of times. It maybe could have been 2-2. You still think the Nuggets win in 6 or whatever, but yeah, they're going to be a tough out. They're a bad matchup for the Warriors, in my opinion. Um, Maybe the Nuggets have a little bit of a better matchup with them just because they have Jokic. I mean, maybe Jokic is a good matchup against any team, but
what do you? Let me ask you a question. What do you think that their starting lineup would look like out the gates?
for the Lakers,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, so this is an interesting one here. So you have um Russell, Vanderbilt, Hachimura, LeBron, and Davis as a potential starting five. I think you put in Reeves there. I think you slide honestly, maybe you slide Russell out of the starting lineup. I don't know. That's something for Coach Ham to figure out. I kind of like having Vando in the starting lineup just for defense, right off the bat. Maybe
Yeah.
Hachimura comes off the bench there and you do Russell, Reeves, Vando, LeBron, and Davis. That
Yeah.
to me seems like a pretty balanced lineup.
Here's this from about an hour ago that they're starting tonight. LeBron, Davis, Reeves, Russell, and Prince.
Interesting. I don't know.
But
I don't know how I feel about Prince on the Lakers.
yeah, I think you probably replace that with Vando, and then you're set. And so
Yeah.
then you have Gabe Vincent coming off the bench, um, and Hachimura coming off the bench as well.
Hachimura came off the bench in the playoffs, and that worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah.
Although they paid him, not like he got a huge contract, but he could be a starter, especially when LeBron sits. I think you'll see Hachimura fill in his spot there because he's a big dude. So, all right, let's jump into just some general questions here. Let's get your take on your confidence in Boston in the East. And do you think the 76ers and the Heat are competitors at all to come out of the East?
As a Boston Celtics fan, I am terrified of the Heat in the playoffs.
Do you think the Heat
Uh,
got worse?
Probably
Yeah.
they got a year older and they didn't do much on the off season. Um, but do I think that they have the best management in the NBA? Yes, I do. I think they have I think it's up for debate whether you think that Steve Kerr or Eric Spoelstra are the two best coaches in the league at this point in time right now. Um, and they just find talent. I mean, they find really good players, but the Heat do.
Yeah,
Um,
I can see that. Are they just going to fill Struce, right? Are they going to fill his role with someone else? Are they going to fill what's the other shooter you just mentioned him who went to the Lakers? Vincent, Gabe
Vincent,
Vincent.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Caleb Martin is going to have a big role next year,
Yeah.
or this coming year, and
You know,
so
it
yeah,
took Jimmy Butler to basically be Michael Jordan Jr. to beat Milwaukee, right? I mean, Milwaukee, the Giannis, he missed some time, but they still beat him. And I don't know if they can do that again, to be honest. It was an all timer, playoff performance by Butler.
yeah. I mean, I think that they're going to need to figure out a way to get them some more help. I think that Bam has to take a giant step forward this year, and so does Hero. Um, because they've lost two very important role players in Vincent and Struce. And so if they don't address that, and if Martin doesn't take another step too, um, they're gonna struggle. But I say that now, and they will figure it out. They'll find another guy off the fucking street, and it's gonna be just fine for them.
Yeah.
Um, so
But
yes, I am.
your confidence overall in Boston.
Oh, out of control.
Yeah.
I think that our team, I mean, the engine is going to be whether or not Porzingis, in my opinion, can stay healthy, because that changes the layer of our team. It's awesome to have Tatum and Brown being kind of those foundational pieces that keep the culture there. But how Porzingis plays and how he spaces the floor, I think, is going to be the name of the game for the Celtics and differentiating how good they are versus the Milwaukee's, the Sixers, and the Heat, and even the Cavs, who I think are a very underlooked team.
Would you say the Cavs are a potential dark horse to maybe not necessarily come out of the East, but would it surprise you at all to see the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals?
It would not surprise me to see the Cavs in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think Mitchell is ascended to um, a top 15, 20 player if he wasn't already. Now that he's kind of has the keys of the kingdom in Cleveland. Um, I love Evan Mobley on
Yeah. Is he
everything
going
that
to
he
take
does
that next
defensively.
step?
He
Yeah.
needs to take it offensively because right
Yeah.
now his defense is out of control. He's amazing defensively, but if he can take in a step offensively, and they have this two center thing with Jarrett Allen and Mobley, and if they can figure out a way that to make that work, it kind of bit them in the butt against the Knicks um, last year in the playoffs. But if they can figure out a way for that to work, or figure out a way to get Mobley to take a big step to where he becomes a top 30 player, 40 player in the world, um, man, watch out.
Yeah.
I think he has big time potential.
I think the Cavs are similar to the Clippers. Maybe they're the Clippers of the East. Everyone's really high on them to start, and not necessarily they're injury prone, but it always feels like, man, they've got some really good pieces and they're ready to take that next step. But for whatever reason, they lose in the first round or second round. I would love to see the Cavs make some noise because, like you, I like a lot of their players on those teams. Maybe they're a little small in the backcourt, but then they're really big in the front court, right? With Allen and Mobley. So
And
I
added
just,
Struess.
yeah, yeah, that's true. So I know another really, really solid role player. I think Mobley, for them to have any shot, like you said, needs to take that next step. And I think he's capable of it. But Bill Simmons talked about this. He's really high on Mobley, but then there's some other guys who are in the NBA, not necessarily players, but just coaches, trainers, and stuff, who don't agree with Simmons or Russillo and just say, this is who Mobley is. But I think that's a little bit premature. So
Yeah.
thoughts on the Sixers is good.
Uh I'm so curious to see how this James Harden ordeal resolves itself. I I don't think that they got better, and the top of the East got a lot better in both Dame and Drew and Porzingis on both the Celtics and Milwaukee, and so um, I feel bad for Joel Embiid. I think that they need to be on Embiid watch right now because um, he's another guy that the Knicks could start targeting. Um, so I'm just curious on how it's all going to resolve itself. I don't believe in the Sixers,
No.
unfortunately. I think that they are we thought that they were.
Yeah. I'm gonna shoot a hot take here. I don't think Embiid can be your best player and you win a championship.
Yeah,
I
he doesn't do what the Joker can do.
yeah.
Um, and uh,
We'll
he's
see if what if Nick Nurse though looks at the Nuggets, that blueprint, tries to implement that. That could be a wrinkle that, can be overlooked in this offseason.
Embiid doesn't what where Embiid struggled against the Celtics, although he was hurt. He didn't feel double teams very well, and that's where he struggled a lot of times. Um, he needs to improve on those double teams and train to trust his teammates and kind of take a page out of Joker's book to be able to leverage passing and other things, and maybe channel his own Jimmy Butler when he was on the Sixers to pass and to involve his teammates a little bit more.
Yeah.
Now that he has that MVP, that's a check off the list. Now he can try and see if he can go further than the second round.
He needs to stay healthy and he needs to stop flopping. For a guy his size, flopping can only hurt physically. Like physically, that is the one thing that's probably adding to his injuries. He needs to stay off the floor. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's end it here. Last topic. We got to go Warriors. In your opinion, what do you think has to shake out for the Warriors to have a chance to make another run?
I think it starts with Clay and Draymond. If
Okay.
I'm being honest, we know what Curry's going to be. He's amazing. He's probably the best player outside of LeBron that we've seen in this past decade, if not Durant and some others. But Curry's amazing. Um, I think Clay being in a contract year, um, and if he can get to some level of his defensive um, versatility, I think that'll be whether or not. And I forgot a main cog in this wheel is Wiggins.
Yeah.
Wiggins was a big piece on why the Warriors stopped kind of having that forcefulness that they had from a defensive perspective. Wiggins does so much great for you guys. And so Wiggins, I'd say, is just as important um, as everything else. Because yeah, the other two could fall in line. So I'll change my answer. Wiggins.
Wiggins. I mean, I don't even think it's a hot take to say Wiggins was the second best player in the 22, championship run. His, like you said, defensive versatility is just it's elite. It's top 5 for a wing in the league. When he's locked in, he's tough to match up against. For me, I don't know if Clay so much as far as performance is going to affect their title run. I think he needs to potentially get out of his own way. I think he has the ability to explode any game, but I think overall it's Wiggins, it's Draymond, and then it's Jonathan Kuminga. I think those three, if it works out well, because I think CP is going to fit in. I think he's too smart of a player to just, have a negative impact for the Warriors. How much can he contribute? That's, we'll have to see. But if JK takes that next step, if JK becomes a, top wing player that looks like he could be in these preseason games, he's shooting the three well, he's passing much better than he ever has, and he is just off the charts athletic, right? Pretty good on ball defender, team defender, meh, he's okay. But if Jonathan takes that third year leap, like some players have, the Tatums, the whoever, right? That third year is a crucial year. I'm hopeful. I think a lot of smart NBA analysts don't have the Warriors as even a top 3 favorite to come out of the West. It seems like it's Suns. I think Warriors are better than Suns roster. I think it's Nuggets and Lakers that, if they end up matching up against, those are going to be their toughest playoff matchups.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go back to last season, you see some of this roster that the Warriors had. How do you generate offense outside of Steph Curry? Um, Clay couldn't hit the broadside of a barn
Oh
um,
God.
in that Lakers series. And so how is it going to be different this year around? Um, my questions is Chris Paul going to facilitate a lot better for those guys to have better shots? Is are you going to run? Are you going to ask Curry to go nuclear every single night to be able to win those games because offense is kind of the key cog? And then lastly is Wiggins. I mean, can
Yeah.
Wiggins chip in 20 points a game? And do it in different ways, tacking the rim and getting to the line.
I think CP is going to be really good for Wiggins, to be honest. CP as a point guard, he's a true point guard, right? They always talk about how that's his elite skill, his IQ. And I think Wiggins sometimes gets lost in the motion offense because he's just almost ingrained that he's an ISO type of scorer, like give me the ball, let me score, but he doesn't have the mentality of an alpha dog scorer, especially when you have a Steph Curry on your team. It's hard for Wiggins to be like, no, like give me the ball, right? But I think CP is going to be like, Wiggins, hey, you've had a couple really good looks, or you're a little bit on fire here. Here's the ball. Steph has no problem taking the back seat for even half a game, right? We've seen that before.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm I'm excited to see it how it unfolds, but I'm sure Steve Kerr will draw something pretty awesome um, with CP in the mix.
Yeah, I agree. All right, David, really appreciate you hopping on here. Maybe we can do another one as the season has unfolded. We can see how our takes today are, panning out with how the season is unfolding.
That sounds great, Matt. Thanks a bunch for having me.
All right, appreciate it. Talk to you later.